with Lean Functional Testing by HP. And today's webinar is brought to you by HP Software. So again, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Bob Cruz. I'm very proud to be the Vivid Florida chapter leader, as well as president of Checkpoint Technologies. We are an HP software partner reseller, authorized training partner, as well as a software support partner specializing in quality assurance and quality control. I myself have been in IT for 20 years, and I've got to tell you, let me introduce today's speakers, because I am very excited with today's webinar and to have been asked to be the moderator. So today's speakers are Amir Bennett. Amir is the Senior Product Manager with over 10 years of experience in the fields of quality assurance, software testing, and automation. He is responsible for HP's Lean Functional Testing, so LeanFT, as well as Unified Functional Testing. Many of you may know that by the previous name of Quick Test Professional. We also have joining us today Joe Colantonio. Joe is a test automation engineer, actually more of a guru. He has more than 15+ years of test automation and performance testing experience. He is founder of the popular test automation blog, joecolantonio.com, where he has been blogging bi-weekly for the last 5 years. And honestly, if you haven't ever heard Joe's blog, you need to check it out. He is the founder and host of Test Talks, a podcast dedicated to all things test automation related, and author of the highly rated book, the UFT API Testing Manifesto, step-by-step hands-on testing guide for the masses. So simply put, Joe's mission is to help individuals and organizations succeed with test automation awesomeness. So again, I'm excited to be here, and thank you so much for joining us. And before we dive right into the webinar, just a few housekeeping tips. Today's live session is intended for all Vivid members. The recording will be posted in the webinar section on the Vivid website, visible for all members. And additionally, today's slide deck and webinar recording will be made available to you. So we will send you the link via email once they are posted to the Vivid website. If you have questions as we go along, please type and send them in using the questions pane in the webinar control panel. And submit those as we go, but the session Q&A will be at the end of the webinar, and we do anticipate providing some additional time because we know we're going to have a lot of questions. But in regard to the webinar control panel, here's a picture of the GoToWebinar control panel. You should be seeing that on your screen on the next slide. And in that, you're going to be able to submit any questions. So you'll notice that to submit a question, you want to make sure the questions pane is expanded and you can type in your question and click on send. So with that being said, let's get started. And I am now going to pass it over to Amir and Joe. Gentlemen, please take it away.
Thank you, Bob. So hi guys, my name is Amir. And what we're going to cover today is basically go over a little bit about the challenges that are present in the FT domain, in the functional testing domain, before we'll drill down into LeanFT. Joe will do a full end-to-end demo on LeanFT, which will cover all the important things that need to be raised. And then we will talk a little bit about the different consumption model, a little bit about pricing, value proposition, and also the difference between LeanFT and UFT. In the end, as Bob mentioned, we will have actually more than 10 minutes. We will going to extend, and we will have like around half an hour just for the Q&A, so don't hesitate to raise your question, and we'll review it in the end. So let me start by telling you one of my challenges throughout the almost 4 years as a PM for UFT. My biggest challenge was how can I meet the different requirements or the different needs coming from different persona or users that each had a different skill set, had a different flavor and desires that they had in mind when working with their automation tool. And you can think that, okay, my goal is to make sure that the automation engineer gets what he needs. But it's not that simple, because as it appears, there are a lot of other persona who are also interested in either doing automation testing or at least contributing to this effort. And if we're looking at this graph that is covering the technical skill set of the different engineers, we can look at the subject matter experts on the right left corner, following by the business analyst or the tester. Those two have a great business understanding, but lack a bit more of the QA understanding, and of course do not have the skill sets to do full-blown automation. Moving forward, we have the test automation engineer, but he is not the most technical engineer out there, because we also encountered the agile automation engineer that needs to do also automation, but in a much faster pace, to make sure that it is worthwhile when it is matter, meaning in the same sprint as the code has been developed. And we also noticed that we have a new persona, usually found in America, but not only there, which is called the DevTester. And this guy is actually a developer in nature, in his core capabilities, and he prefers to work in the development IDEs that his peers are working on, and to do things in the most efficient way according to what he sees. So how can I have one single tool that basically allow us to meet the demands of this variety of users? And I must admit that up until this version 12.5, I didn't have a good solution for that. But now with version 12.5, for the first time, we do have a solution, because now, of course, UFT is still targeting the test automation engineer, but inside this packaging, we have two other things that I would like to share with you today. The first thing is business process testing, and this is a solution, if you don't know, that provides you the automation framework, which is based on breaking the testing flows into components that can be later on reused, help with the maintainability, and also be relevant for other persons who are less technical. So we had a lot of accelerators, a lot of tools that will allow this solution to be relevant both to the non-technical engineers, and later on be actually created, all the components are created by the automation engineers. So this is the automation framework of choice. And LeanFT, Lean Functional Testing, this is the solution that we designed specifically to address the needs of the more technical engineers. And we will see in a second how exactly this is answering their demands. Now, you will see later on also that UFT basically provides, with the UFT license, you can actually use also Lean Functional Testing. And you can see also that business process testing is now much more tightly integrated inside the UFT IDE. So basically providing you with one single tool the ability to address all of your automation needs. And with that, let's have a drill down into the DevTester and the Agile Automation Engineer existing problems. And I divided it into two. First, let's start with introducing Lars, who is as I mentioned, the Agile Automation Engineer. He is a guy that is consider himself as an expert in his computing skill, and he's working under either an automation leader, part of an automation center of excellence, or reporting to a QA group manager. He's currently using UFT, and he's struggling with some of issues that are disturbing him. For example, his execution coverage is lacking. This might be because he doesn't have enough machine in his organization, or he doesn't have enough licenses to complete all of the tests it needs to run as part of a nightly build, for example, and get the results in time. It can be because he doesn't have enough time to complete all of his tasks, meaning to create and maintain his tests, and there might be different reasons for that. And also he feels that his power or influence is decreasing a bit because he's getting pressured by his peer developers or by different teams in the organization that started to use other tools and are pushing him to use also the tools that they have in mind. So these can be the main problems that Lars might have by using UFT in this more, let's say, agile-oriented DevOps kind of environment. And with LeanFT, we are, of course, going to address all of these problems. But the Lars of the world are not the only one that we have segmented or planning to address with LeanFT. We also have the Mikes. And the Mike is a dev tester. He's working with an open source solution, reporting directly to an R&D manager. He's also an expert in his computing skill. But also Mike has a few problems with his selected tool of choice. And this is, again, something that we collected from numerous discussions that we had with open source users. Of course, some of these things can be a workaround and you can find solution for them, but it is, in most of the cases, quite a hassle or a time-consuming thing. And what are the things that we hear most that those kind of users are complaining about? First is that the test can be fragile, and doing RCA, which stands for root cause analysis or test maintenance, is a chore that takes a lot of time. The reason behind it is regarding how the open source solution are actually recognizing the object. And you know that it is based on XPath or CSS, which is good, but after you will see Joe's demonstration of what you can do with LeanFT, you will understand that there is much better way to make sure that you are recognizing uniquely the objects to allow you a much more stable test creation or reliable one that will not break from one build to the other. And regarding root cause analysis, again, this relates to what are the tools or what are the capabilities that you have in your solution in order to create reporting, checkpoints, etc., that will allow you a better root cause analysis. The second point is how challenging, nearly impossible is it to build an end-to-end business flow when it comes to open source solution. So no matter if it is only web or even something that, of course, take into account different technologies that are not only web, how you can address them, how you can do data driving, how you can do API testing in a fast and efficient way, and whether or not you have a good test auditing to really understand what were the flows that were covered or not. So again, we have here a real challenge. The third point is regarding the learning curve and the associated risk with open source. And again, once you will get your hands on LeanFT and you will start working on it, you will soon understand that the learnability of this new tool is much faster than any other open source solution out there because of the great SDK and the API it provides, because of the documentation, and because of many other numerous things that are related to the ease of use that we, of course, worked very hard in order to achieve. So with that, let's talk about what is LeanFT. I guess most of you already heard it or got at least the elevator pitch around it. So sorry if I'm repeating a little bit what you already know. But for those of you who haven't heard what LeanFT is all about, let me start by emphasizing that this is a solution built specifically for teams that are working in DevOps or continuous integration kind of way, and would like also to make sure that their testing is also adjusted accordingly. It was designed for the technical automation engineer or the dev tester, as I mentioned before, and this is a very powerful and lightweight solution that is working inside the developer IDEs. So Visual Studio and Eclipse are the ones that we are supporting in our first release. By the way, the first release is not LeanFT version 1, but actually LeanFT version 12.5, because we are using the same, let's say, release vehicle as part of UFT. So it comes with the UFT bundle or binary, but you can also get it as a standalone. But still, the version number is 12.5. We are taking advantage of the unit test framework. So it can be either JUnit, NUnit, MBUnit, up to you, what you prefer to use. And it is not that we are focusing our users to the component level. On the contrary, we still recommend them to use it to create an end-to-end test flow. But because we are writing on this framework, we are automatic, let's say, citizen, natural citizen, into the inside the dev ecosystem. So it can be related to where you can store your tests, which can be done in the leading source control like Subversion on Git. It can be related to which framework you can use. So besides the unit test framework, you can also use frameworks like Cucumber or JBHave. It is also relates, of course, to which CI tools you can use and how you can use it. And again, the answer here is that you can use everything. So Jenkins is one example, but again, everything that can run unit test should be able to run also the LeanFT, because LeanFT outcome is basically a unit test. So with that, let's move to what is the core competence of version 12.5, which I mentioned is the first version to be released. Actually, we announced it a month ago and we released it a week ago. We talked about the standard IDEs. We talked about the integration. The only integration that I haven't mentioned is the integration with ALM or QC. And we will have an integration quite soon in the next couple of weeks with ALM or QC version 11.5.2. And soon ALM 12.5 will be released, and of course we will also be integrated to that. If you are interested to be a beta partner or to get access to this integration as soon as possible, just contact me and we can add you to this program. Regarding the language, I forgot to mention it. So of course, once we are moving to the developer IDE, we will allow you to work in the language that is relevant for this IDE, so C# for Visual Studio and Java for Eclipse. Regarding technologies, so this solution is taking some of its assets and some of its core directly from UFT. And one thing that is part of it is, of course, the technology supportability. And this is something that allows us to support not only the web, but also whatever technology that we prefer. So we had to select which technologies we want to provide as part of the first release. And as you can see in the first bullet, we are supporting with 12.5 web, standard Windows, .NET, WPF, and SAP UI5. In a patch that will come soon, we will also add support for mobile, Java, and SAP GUI. And of course, this list will continue to increase from one version to the other. Regarding the functionality, I will not go over everything here because Joe will actually demonstrate it live in a second. I would just want to emphasize that as part of the move or the migration of the code and concept from UFT to LeanFT, we made sure that we will optimize what we can achieve from the developer IDE and adjust the functionality to the new segment's reality and demands. So a few examples for that can be found in the Object Identification Center and the application model. Those two names are new names, but it's representing old concepts. So the Object Identification Center is basically the new name for the SPY, and the application model is the new name for the object repository. And the reason why we changed the name is because we added so much cool stuff to those functions that basically we wanted to create this differentiation so we will understand that something new and exciting has occurred and get your hands and start invest and understand better what it means. And you will see in a second what I'm talking about. But other two things that I would like to mention is that we also provide a new HTML run report. This is something that is shared between LeanFT and UFT, much lightweighted, something that can easily be shared in an email even between your team members, and quite an exciting thing that we will, of course, also continue to invest on to improve from one release to the other. And regarding the consumption, let's leave this. I have a slide dedicated on how you basically can get and start enjoying LeanFT. In most of the cases, it will be free of charge for many of you. And with that, I would like to pass it on to Joe, who will actually show you some of the things that I just mentioned. And from there, we will continue with the value proposition and consumption model. So Joe, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Amir. Okay. Just Give me 1 second to go into my VM. All right, great. All right, so there are 3 main things I'd like to show today. First, I would like to go over how to get started creating a test script using LeanFT. Then I'd like to take a look at some of the main features in LeanFT, like the new HTML reporter and the application model. And then finally, I'd like to show how easy it is actually to run this script against multiple different browsers pretty easily, as you'll see. So as Amir has shown, LeanFT really is HP's new tool that they developed from the ground up, basically to handle all the modern automation demands of things like continuous integration and DevOps. And what I think is really cool about LeanFT is it actually does fit into your developer's ecosystem. So you can start using the same tools that your developers use to create automated tests. And this is a big benefit. So if you have any issues, because you're using the same language, same technology, same process, it'll be a lot easier to get automation, I think, collaboration going on. Also, not to mention, really, the added benefit of having access, you basically have access to all HP's Windows-based technologies that Selenium does not provide. So this is important because if you're like me, I work for a large enterprise, and many of my tests that I create, actually some of the test flows include non-browser-based applications. And so what's a pain is now we have 2 frameworks. We have one framework that's Selenium and Java, and then another one that's in UFT, and it's just hard to maintain, hard to keep them in sync. Now all I need to do is use LeanFT within my existing Selenium framework, and I can just go ahead like I've been doing all along, nothing extra special to go on. So it's pretty awesome because it does interact then with a lot of those thick client applications that I need to use during some of my test flows. All right, so basically, when you get started with LeanFT, once you install it, you can either use Visual Studio or Java. So when you start with Visual Studio, when you click on Project, you'll have you actually have 3 new options underneath your templates Visual C# test. And so one is the LeanFT application model project, which we'll look at within the demo later on. And then also you have access to either using MS Test or NUnit. So for this demo, what I'm doing is I'm going to use MS Test. And once you import that template, it actually includes, let me expand this so you can see it better. It actually includes all the annotations that you need in order to get started with that unit testing framework. So what's important to know is if you use Java, it's the same type of thing. If you started Java up and you did File New and you go to Other, you'll see 2 new options now for LeanFT. One is for a JUnit project and one is for a test case. Okay, so with this demo, all I'm doing really is I'm going to navigate to HP's new documentation page, which includes all the documentation you need in order to get started with LeanFT. And I'm just going to click on this FAQ question section, and just to show you how we can go to a web page, navigate to it, and then interact with some of the objects on it. And so really to get started, once you have your template selected of what unit testing framework you want to use and you know what you want to automate, then all you need to do is start importing the different SDKs that you want to use for within your test. So it automatically out of the box has the LeanFT SDK installed. So because this is just a web test, I included the web SDK. But like Amir says, it does support other technologies. So when you click on that telesense dot, it'll show you all the other options you have. So like he went over, you can test WPFs, WinForms, web, standard Windows, SAP. And like I said, what's really cool, you can do it all within one script. So you can test a browser and then also interact with your other non-browser apps. So I think that's really neat. So let's include that back. Okay, cool. So once you have that imported, you now have access to all the methods that you can use within the Selenium SDK for the web for the LeanFT. So basically the first thing you want to do is you want to create a browser instance. So to save time, I've already created this code. And basically all you're doing is you're creating a variable browser of type iBrowser, which includes what browser that you want to interact with. So if this was a Firefox, you can change this to Firefox, which we'll see later, or Internet Explorer. But I just wanted to interact with Chrome on this first test. And obviously if this was a real test, you'd probably have this in a method that would handle all this in the background, so you wouldn't have a separate test for each one. And like I said, I'll show you how easy it is to run against different tests. But once you have an instance of that browser class, when you click on browser, and if you used UFT or QTP before, you'll see all these methods. And actually, they've been really good with the SDK, like Amir said. It's really readable, and if you've used UFT or QTP before, a lot of these methods are going to be familiar to you. So if you've already created UFT or QTP frameworks, the learning curve is going to be a lot less for you because you're probably already familiar with half these methods that are in there already. And so once I have that browser, I just want to navigate then to a web page. So I'm just doing the navigate, which you're probably familiar with, and just passing it the URL that I want to navigate to. And then now here's something new with LeanFT. So there's three main ways, three options that you can use to identify an object. And so the first one is you can actually just use descriptive programming and type this all up if you knew what it was that you wanted to interact with. The second option is you can actually use this new, what they call is the Object Identification Center now, but if you've used UFT before, it's the Object Spy. And you could spy on an object, which I'll show you, and grab this data automatically. And the third option, which we'll go over, is you can actually use what they're calling the application model. And the application model is just like Amir said, it's just like the object repository, and I'll show you how we can use that also. So what I want to do is I want to navigate to the LeanFT documentation page, and then I want to click on the frequently asked questions page. So if you click on the Object Identification Center and you navigate to the page that you want to interact with, all you need to do then is just spy on the object that you want to perform an action on. So I want to click on this frequently asked questions link. So I'm just going to click on that. And hopefully this is large enough for you, but notice within the Object Identification Center, what's cool, it shows you all the recommended objects that HP recommends you use in order to identify that object. So they'll have little stars next to it. So I'm just going to select the stars that they recommend. And also, just to make sure, just because I'm paranoid, I just want to highlight that to make sure that this is actually going to work. So there's this highlight option, and notice it did find a match and only found one. This is really cool. So if you used Firefox before or Chrome developer tools, I think this is a little bit easier because not only does it show you all the properties available to you for that element, but it actually gives you recommendations on which ones to use to make it unique, which is one of the main challenges you usually have when you're testing something. And so once you have that, then you can copy that code. And like I said, because it supports C# or Java, you can select either C# or Java. Because I'm using C#, I'll use C#. And I'm just going to copy this information to my clipboard. So you just click on that clipboard icon. And then when you go back into your script, all you need to do then is just paste it in. And so once you have the properties specified that you want to interact with, and notice it's the same ones that I already have in my script, you just then want to assign a variable to it. And basically, you're creating a test object that really includes all the unique property values to help you ID the object you want LeanFT to work with in your app. And so once you have a reference then to the test object that you want to interact with, once again, you'll be able to use all the methods that you're probably familiar with already. So if you do frequently asked links, you'll see all the other methods that you can use, like click, display name, exist. Once again, if you use UFT or QTP before, a lot of these should be familiar to you. So before I show you what happens next in the script, I wanted to show you the third way that you can interact with an object, and that is using the application model. So to use an application model, what you do is you right-click on your object, on your project, and when you do that, you have an option to add an application model option. And once you have that, let me open it up. I've already gone ahead and created one. I called mine Joe app. In here is where you then specify all the objects that you want to interact with. So say we want to add something to our application model that's not currently in here. You just add this new link. You would give the object a name. Just give it a name, what technology you want to use. I'm going to use web. You then select what type of technology it is. You can give it a description, upload an image, and then specify the properties you want to use. So that's one way of doing it. Or once again, you can use the Object Center to spy on it and to grab that for you. So I've already gone ahead and added the frequently asked questions link to my test. And so if you took a look at it, I've already added the image that shows me what I'm interacting with. And you can see the properties here. Inner text HTML is the same one that I have in my descriptive programming way. So this is just a cleaner way that you can create scripts that are more reusable. You have an object repository-like application model that you can then use for your other projects, and it just makes it cleaner. So rather than having to write all this script here to show what properties you want to interact with, you just need to create an instance of your application model. So I called my application model JoApp. So I just created JoApp app equals my new JoApp, and I just passed it a driver instance that I called my browser. And then once you have that now, when you click on app, you then have access to all the objects that are in your object model, application model. So I only have one object in there, so it shows me the frequently the FAQ link. But if you had tons of them, they would all appear here. And that's one way you can get code reuse and not have to keep writing this in your script, and makes it a lot more readable. So like I said, I'm going to use the descriptive programming piece. But I just wanted to point out also, when you look into Java, Java does the same thing when you start a new project. It also creates a template using JUnit with all the annotations you need to get started. And the syntax is pretty similar to what it is in .NET. Because this came out later, I really didn't have time to play around with it. I've been using the Visual Studio piece more, so that's why the demo's on that. But I just wanted to make sure everyone remembers that you can also do this functionality in Java. The only thing that's missing at this point is the application model, which I think HP is working on, but that will be there at some point. But just so you know, you do have the option of Visual Studio or Java when you do get started with LeanFT 12.5. Cool. All right, so I have a link that I want to interact with. So now, once again, I'm just going to use this this exist method that a lot of you are probably familiar with. So it's going to go to the page. It's going to wait to make sure that the link exists. It's going to wait up to 5 seconds. It's not a hard wait. And if it does exist, it's going to return either true or false. And if it is true, I'm just passing it a message to the reporter. So once again, a lot of this should look familiar to you if you've used the UFT before, or QTP. Same exact type of syntax, same parameters that you're passing, and also the same types of methods you would perform. You also could be, this is what they call, I think, a custom assertion. You can also use your standard MS test assertions and NUnit assertions or JUnit assertions. So you can also, if you want, like if you're using a framework that your developers are using, you probably want to go that way. But this way I just found easier, and I think it's a good point of reference for people that are already familiar with QTP and UFT to use this method right now as just a demonstration purpose. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to look to see if that link's available. If it does, I'm just going to pass a message to the reporter telling it pass. If it doesn't, it's going to fail. And then I'm going to close the browser. So let's just run this test and just see what happens and look at the results. So I'm just going to go ahead and just run my tests. Once again, it just navigates to the page. It's going to go click on the frequently asked questions link. And then it should pass. So let me close the SPY here. And let's take a look at the results. So I went ahead and have a shortcut to the results. Because we're debugging now, it's under the Run Results folder. And under the Run Results folder, you'll have a Run Results HTML file. So I'm just going to open this up and take a look at the results. And once again, I don't mean to keep going back to this, but I think this is a big point. If you've used UFT or QTP before, this should look very familiar to you. It is a new technology for the reporter. Like Amir said, it's HTML, so you could just email this to someone without them having any other software on their machine. But it does also look kind of similar to the old reporter. Same type of information that you're used to already is going to be available within the HTML reporter. It shows you all the actions that were performed, what properties were passed. So we know this was a Chrome test. It automatically inputs this into the report. So you don't have to know, oh, wait, what test did I run this for? Was it IE or Firefox? It tells you the actions that were performed, and it also shows you the properties that you used in order to interact with that object. So if it failed, it would have a failure, and it also would show the tags, the property values that you used in order to interact with that object that didn't work. So that's the HTML reporter. If it passed or failed, also you'd have the results listed at the top here. All right, cool. So that's how you get started creating a script. We went over how to use an application model and the QTP SPY. I know we went quick, but I just wanted to just give you a high-level overview of what's going on. So what I want to do now is just show you, and once again, if you used UFT or QT before, you know how painful this is. What I want to do now is I want to run the same exact test and not have to modify it at all. I don't want to have to see a list of rules that I can do and not do. I just want to use the same test and leverage it without doing any other extra work and just run it against another browser. So I'm just going to run this against Firefox now. I ran and I created and developed this completely against Chrome, And now I'm just going to run it against Firefox, and let's just see what happens. So I'm going to run all again. Cool, so it passed. And once again, if we took a look at the results, notice this time it says Firefox, and it gives the same exact information that we had earlier, except it's just Firefox specific. So I don't know if you're like me, but I think that's pretty awesome. I didn't do anything. All I did was say run against Firefox, and it ran. And I think it's going to be a big time saver, and it's something you're probably used to already with if you're using Selenium, but you don't have to include any extra servers. You don't have to use the ID server. You don't have to have that installed or configured, or the Chrome. So this one out of the box, once you have LeanFT installed, all you need to do then is just specify what browser you want to use, and it knows how to interact with it automatically. So that's the HTML reporter. So I think that's all I have to show right now as part of the demo, but I just wanted to point us back to the website, because I just wanted to go over a few things really quick of questions I've already been getting asked on my blog. And so what's unique about LeanFT, there's nothing against HP's knowledge base, but LeanFT's help is all online. You don't have to go through any firewalls. You don't have to install. You don't have to log into anything. You just go to their page and you have all the information there. So it's just a little less work that you have to do, which is always better. And it does include a lot of things like how to get started, what the basics are. They have code examples, and they have some advanced things. So if you wanted to use Insight image-based identification methods that you've been using in UFT, you also can use that within LeanFT, but I don't have a demo for that. And some other things that you usually get questions about are, does it integrate with Cucumber? And the answer is yes, it does integrate with Cucumber. And can you run it in CI systems like Jenkins? And the answer is yes. If you go to the demo help center and just click on integrations, and it'll give you step-by-step what you need to do in order to interact with or to integrate with CI systems and Cucumber. So Amir, actually, I think the next question people are probably asking now is, how can customers get their hands on LeanFT?
Right. And actually, I can tell you that I've been viewing the question that we just received in the last half an hour, and we have, I think, more than 200 questions. I try to answer a few of them during your demo. Feel free to continue doing it while I'm continuing with the slide deck. And to answer your question, let me just present again my screen. 1 second. Okay. So basically, we are looking at 3 different consumption models. And the first scenario is looking at our existing UFT install base. And I'm emphasizing the UFT install base because many of you might have been using the UFT version, but behind the scene, the licenses that have been consumed are legacy ones like QDP or functional testing. So scenario number 1 is talking only on the UFT licenses and not on the QDP and FT ones. And in those cases, UFT users will be able to use LeanFT free of charge. What it means is that they will be able to decide as part of the installation wizard what they want to install on the machine. They can install both UFT and LeanFT, and they can work on it again in the same machine, but not in the same time. While they are using any of these 2 solutions, they will consume the UFT license. If a QDP or a functional testing user would like to use LeanFT, he will need to basically upgrade his license to UFT, and this will give him not only the ability to use LeanFT, but of course also the ability to use all of the API testing capabilities, which we already released in 11.5, and of course continuing on improving. So this is talking about scenario number 1. And let's leave aside for a second the runtime engine. I will talk about it briefly when we will discuss what's new in UFT 12.5. But the runtime engine is only relevant for UFT and not for the LeanFT solution. The second scenario, I'm calling it the mix and match. In this case, we are looking at existing customers that might already have either UFT or QTP, and they just need to buy more licenses. Okay. In this case, we are basically providing to the company the ability to choose exactly what it needs, meaning to have the flexibility to decide whether they want to buy the full-blown UFT or just the standalone LeanFT solution. And we're also going to have a standalone runtime engine for the UFT scripts, which of course those two standalone solutions will be sold and offered in a much lower price point. So this mix and match, again, providing the users the maximal flexibility and also the ability to reduce their total cost of ownership. In the last scenario, we are looking at the line of business that are yet to use neither of our solutions. And in this case, if they fancy just LeanFT, they can do just that, meaning buying LeanFT with no dependency of whether or not they have UFT already in their shop or not. Okay, so those are basically the three main scenarios. So as I mentioned, if you are an already existing UFT customers, you will be able to get LeanFT free of charge. And if you're using an older version, just upgrade to UFT, older license version, I mean, just upgrade to UFT or just buy the standalone LeanFT. Now, another important thing to mention is that we moved with version 12.5 to a new license mechanism called AutoPass. This is something that is being developed in HP, and it is actually shared between all the HP software portfolio, or most of it at least. So this license server can accommodate the licenses of all the different UFT, QTP, and FT, all the licenses. So it doesn't mean that you are now forced to migrate your licenses to UFT. But it does require you to go over a short migration process of the licenses themselves. So everyone will need to basically to change their licenses in order to work with version 12.5. And no matter if you want to use LeanFT or just UFT, if 12.5 is the version that you desire, you will need to basically to change your license. And of course, we recommend you to also upgrade your older licenses to UFT in order to get the value of both LeanFT and the API testing. Now, let's see that we cover the main business values coming from LeanFT. I think some of it might be already quite trivial after seeing Joe's demo, but just to make sure that we are all aligned here on the main things that are important to share. The first thing, I believe, and maybe the most important thing, that now for the first time we do have a great bridge between the QA silo and the development one, an enabler to a better collaboration between dev and QA. And this can be achieved in the first level by giving the developers the ability to, and by using the Object Identification Center that Joe just showed you, the ability to better understand how each of their object is being uniquely recognized, what are the different attributes, how the QA decided to which attributes it selected in order to create this uniqueness. Once the developer understands it, automatically they will make sure that their changes will not affect those attributes, and by that you will get a much more robust test. Now, this is the first step, but of course, the holy grail in my eye is to have the developers developing their unit test with LeanFT. It will be, of course, only focused on the component level, but later on, once the QA are taking the classes, taking the outcome, the unit test that the developers have been doing, and elaborating them so they will become the end-to-end test flow that only QA can really create, then you have the holy grail, because it is the maximal shift to the left as possible, taking advantage of the unit test that the developer have been doing and just elaborating them so it will be relevant for regression or sanity or whatever the QA needs to create right now. The second point is and it's also the last point, is how this solution is basically part of the dev ecosystem or the CI/CD ecosystem, which is very important to many of our users. And because, again, we are using the unit test framework, it is a natural citizen, as I mentioned before, in almost everything that you can think of that can consume unit test behind the scene. Natural continuity from UFT. So I saw a lot of questions regarding, okay, what can I do with my existing scripts and what can I do with my existing objects? So as Joe mentioned as well, you can use your existing object repositories with LeanFT. Just migrate them to LeanFT and you will be able just to start not from scratch, but by taking this quite a nice leap forward from the beginning. And I also mentioned that learnability-wise, it is, of course, much easier to start with comparing any other open source solution. But I also want to mention that we are working with a partner to provide a migration, an automatic migration for the entire script, not only the object repository, but for the entire script. So stay tuned on that. Their solution is already available, so you can just Google it. It is called QuickLean, and this is something that, again, a partner of HP is providing. Out of the box, however, you will not be able to take the QTP or UFT script and just use them in LeanFT, because we are talking about different languages and different models. Regarding the easily accessible and adoptable, so I believe that because we gave it free of charge to our UFT customers, we will see quite a nice adoption trend from the beginning. But even if you would like to start using it from fresh and you don't have any UFT licenses, you can start getting or evaluating LeanFT for 30 days for free. And if you want to buy, you can just buy a 3-month package or 6-month package and a 12-month package, which starts with only $133 per month, which also includes support in it. And of course, regarding the adoptable and accessible, it is also relates to the installation side. We are talking about only a few hundred, I think it's around 200 megabytes of installation directly on your IDE, through the SDK that Joe showed you before. Now, regarding the increased productivity through minimal maintenance, again, you will only see the value here, and this is actually one of the big differentiators that we have comparing open source solution. You will only really notice it once you will start using LeanFT, once you will start using the Object Identification Center and the application model. This is the way to get this higher productivity and higher return on investment. And because of you have the 30 days evaluation period, I strongly recommend you to get this notion into practice by yourself. It is also important to mention that this is our first release, and as such, of course, not everything that I wanted to have in this version, or I'm sorry, in this product, I was able to squeeze into the first release. So we can see here a few examples, and I'm sorry, I see that the V has moved a bit, but you can get the ID. So I can still share with you that there is a few things that are not yet available in LeanFT. Some of them will never be available in LeanFT, so we are not planning to have the same richness of functionality or technology support in LeanFT that exists in UFT. UFT is still the flagship, and this is what we recommend to the majority of our users that are regular automation engineers. LeanFT is more technical solution that will have only a subset of the functionality and the technologies, even in the longer run. But some of the capabilities that are existing in UFT are yet to be in LeanFT. For example, record. So as you saw from Joe's demonstration, you need to do it through either the creation of the script, either through using the Object Identification Center, the application models, but it is more a code-related solution, and record is not part of this in this release, but we are working on it for the future releases. Same goes for the BPT integration. So we would like to have a business process testing relevant not only for UFT or for Sprinter, but also that it will be able to use also LeanFT, and this is also something that we are currently working on. Same goes for API testing. So of course you can do API testing with LeanFT because you are inside the developer environment and you can interact with databases, with file system, doing REST calls, WSDL, etc. But you will need to code it yourself. And of course in UFT you get a lot of accelerators or let's say build methods that allows you to achieve it in a much faster and a more efficient way. And we would like also to take some of these methods and move them to LeanFT as well, not part of this release, but a part of our roadmap. And this is only a subset of the list. Technologies, as I mentioned before, we are only supporting 5 technologies right now, and UFT supports more than 30 technologies. And with that, I would just like to highlight what are the most important things as part of 12.5 release, which came, this was also a question that I received. It's already available to the market. So just go, if you are an existing customer, just go to the HPSSO site and get your hand on it. Or if you are a new customer, we have the evaluation site, which is hp.com/go/LeanFT or UFT, where you can actually get your hands on this latest release. So as you can see here, we had a lot of things that we actually advanced also with UFT version 12.5, and this is only the delta between 12.02 that was released half a year ago to 12.5. And as you can see, we did accomplish quite a lot during this half a year. The only 2 things that it is important for me to highlight now is the runtime engine. And this is basically, we did like a heart surgery, and we took all the code that is relevant for the execution of the test, and we divided it and provided it as a standalone offering, much lightweighted, and of course also priced in a much lower price point that will allow you to reduce your total cost of ownership and also to do the deployment in a much faster pace on your remote host. The HTML-based report is something that you already seen, so this is shared between UFT and LeanFT. And in the cross-browser testing, it is also something that is very important for many of our customers. We moved our supportability in Firefox, and we already did it, by the way, in Chrome in 12.02. We moved the supportability of the on the support of the latest version of the browsers that are coming from Chrome and Firefox to the Chrome and to the Firefox stores. So whenever you have a new version that you are getting probably automatically, you will also get the add-in from HP that will add the support for this version. And also, it is much easier for you to create one test that will cover all the different browsers and to have in a single test through the iteration parameterization the ability to run it on all the different browsers that you want, again with one single test that will have in the end one single report. So very exciting news for the ones that are using UFT for web testing. There are a lot of additional resources. You will be able to get this deck, and everything you can see in blue is basically in hyperlink that you will be able to access through 2 other resources like a datasheet for LeanFT, marketing movies, the online documentation that Joe showed you before, and also a podcast, a great podcast that Joe made a couple of weeks ago. It is also important to mention that the LeanFT is available also as a term license, as I mentioned, like of 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months, and you can purchase it either by a credit card or a bank transfer or regular PO. So you will be able to get it already now in our SaaS environment. So you have here the online.tem@hp.com. If you have any other question regarding how to consume it and to get these term licenses, go ahead and send us a mail to this distribution list. And with that, I would like to start taking some of your questions.
Hi, Amir, and I tell you what, if you don't mind, well, first off, great job by both you and Joe. I mean, just fantastic. I think I heard people saying ooh and ah several times when Joe was doing the demo. But before we dive into the questions, I just want to cover a couple of things just in case some of our audience do need to drop off right at the top of the hour. So just one thing, if you would go to the next slide, Amir. One thing I want to share with the team is about a very exciting Vivid event on LeanFT in London. So existing UFT users are welcome to come hear about the advantages of migrating to HP LeanFT. The date, and time is Friday, September 11th from 2:30 p.m. to 5 p.m. And obviously that's London time. And then there on your screen in that last bullet, you will see the link where you can go and register for that exciting event. Another event I want to share with you is the HP Big Data Conference 2015 is right around the corner. So join us. That is at the Westin Waterfront Hotel in historic downtown Boston. You can check out Faneuil Hall while you're there. There is no other place where you will find so many big data experts. We will feature real-world customers discussing use cases, developers and engineers having real exchanges, and experts who are there to answer your toughest questions. Everyone that attends is passionate about using data to drive superior business outcomes. And you can register and use the unique Vivid Worldwide link. So again, be sure to check that out, please. So without any further waste of time, I am now going to dive in some questions for you, Amir and Joe. We've got numerous questions. We're going to do our best to get to as many as we can. So Amir, one question that I have here is, will BPT, Business Process Testing, support LeanFT in the future?
Yes, the answer is yes. As I mentioned, this is one of the highest priority items that I have in my roadmap, and it's going to be very soon available.
Excellent, fantastic. And Amir, another question. Can you share with the audience what the price tag is for LeanFT?
So we have different models, as I mentioned. We have the term model and we have the perpetual model. I would just say that for the term, go to the SaaS platform, do a Google search on LeanFT in SaaS, and you will find the exact pricing for the different options. So it starts from $500. For a yearly base, it's around $1.6 $100. So it depends on exactly what you need, and everything is visible for you there. If you're looking for a perpetual license, I do recommend you to go and talk with one of our HP sales representatives in order to get this information.
Excellent, perfect. Another question, Amir, does HP LeanFT support Windows 10? I know we've all been hearing a lot about Windows 10 lately.
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, we are taking from LeanFT is consuming from UFT the technology's supportability, which means that whatever UFT supports in the technologies that, of course, LeanFT consume will be relevant also for LeanFT. Now, regarding Windows 10, this is something that we have yet to support with UFT. It is planned to be part of our next service pack, and once it will be there, it will be also relevant for LeanFT. So very soon it will be supported.
Great, great. And here's a great question. Will LeanFT support other IDEs like IntelliJ?
Yeah, so actually IntelliJ is our next in line. So currently we selected the two most commonly used IDEs, Eclipse and Visual Studio, and IntelliJ is next in line. I cannot give you an exact date for that, but priority-wise, this is the next IDE in line.
Excellent. All right, Amir, thank you very much. Does LeanFT support running multiple instances of a test at on the same machine?
Yeah, great question. And again, this relates to what our capabilities with UFT, because behind the scene, the engine or the agents that are being used are the UFT ones. And unfortunately, we still have the glass ceiling of having only one instance per host that can be executed. And this limitation is relevant for both UFT and LeanFT. So the answer is no, not yet. I can tell you that this is also something that I'm working together with my R&D to fix in the future.
Great, great. Thank you, Amir. I see several questions, and I know you answered it in regard to converting QuickTest ProTest into LeanFT, and you had shared with the audience that there is a partner solution for that. So because I have so many questions on that, Amir, can you just touch upon that again, please?
Yes, so the partner name is Gallup, and their solution is called QuickLean. They already have a website up and running. I recommend you to visit it and to contact them. There is a free trial also, and of course, if you have any further question, you have also in their site how to contact and get further information. But starting an evaluation yourself is something quite easy, as far as I understand.
Excellent. And Amir, how can you run Selenium scripts from LeanFT?
So what we made sure is that the work that you already did with Selenium will not go to waste, and you will be able basically to take the script and basically enrich them or elaborate them, or even change some of the lines just because you have a few controls that are not supported properly through Selenium, or because you need to address like a Windows pop-up that Selenium cannot do easily. And you can just add the SDK for LeanFT on the top of the Selenium script and start writing your LeanFT code. So they can coexist together in the same single script and can be executed, of course, from Jenkins or whatever CI tool. It doesn't mean that you can work with the WebDriver, but it does mean that you can execute the Selenium script, again, either from a CI tool or directly from your machine through the unit test runners.
Excellent. And you know, when you mention that, Joe, so we have a great question here in regard to the integration between LeanFT and ALM Test Lab. Can you share some information on that?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say, I thought you said that it's not supported yet, but it's something that you're working on with integration with ALM.
Correct. So we are planning to have an integration with ALM. It will not be as wide as the integration between ALM and UFT, but it will allow you to execute from ALM to send a command basically to the CI tool of executing the test and getting back the report or the result of the test to ALM. So this is the most commonly used use case.
Also, doesn't ALM have an API that you can interact with specifically within Java or C#?
Yes. So we are writing, basically we are creating a custom test type, which will be LeanFT. And through this test type, we are able basically to get back the report and to start the execution.
Fantastic, great. And then, you know, there are a lot of questions here also, Amir and Joe, in regard to utilizing LeanFT with mobile application testing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, as I mentioned regarding the technologies that we support, the next 3 technologies that we will add in the next couple of months are Java, mobile, and sub-GUI. So, and of course, by the mobile integration or the mobile support, it means that it will work out of the box with the HP Mobile Center.
Great. Let me see, and just so many questions here, just trying to pick some out that would be relevant to the vast majority of the audience. can you touch upon which versions of the different browsers are supported? So do we need a LeanFT update if a browser update comes?
So this relates to the question regarding the web supportabilities. And again, because LeanFT and UFT are sharing the same code around web supportability, it will have the same browsers and browser version supported in both. The only exception is Safari, where UFT has a Safari supportability and LeanFT still doesn't. But other from that, it's going to be the same. And same goes to the ability to get the automatic updates directly from the Firefox or the Chrome stores. So this will be relevant for both LeanFT and UFT. If you don't know what are the latest versions that are being supported, you can easily check it in our product availability metrics. But in general, we support all the latest versions. So both in Chrome, Firefox, IE 10, of course, are supported already, and you can see it in the product availability metrics.
Excellent, excellent. Amir and Joe, I have a couple of questions here in regard to HP's plans on providing an add-in for terminal emulator applications.
So as I mentioned, UFT is supporting 30 different technologies. One of them is the terminal emulators. And what we're doing is basically from one release of LeanFT to the other, I'm working to understand what is the next technologies that we want to add support to. And of course, terminal emulators will be also in our spotlight. It already is, but I don't want to tell you that it is going to be supported quite soon. The only thing here that I can tell you is regarding mobile, Java, and sub-GUI. Terminal emulators will need to come a little bit later. But it is important to me to mention that there is no dependency or a limitation to the LeanFT supportability comparing UFT. So it is up to basically to me to decide what should be the next technologies that I want LeanFT to support.
Very good, very good. And Amir and Joe, here's one in regard to when the license is invoked. So at which point does the license get invoked? During the development of the test or execution or both?
So the answer is both. So once you are opening LeanFT, you're already consuming a license. Of course, you can, and Joe can show it to you if you want later on, you can turn it off and stop using LeanFT and still work with your developer IDE. So we are not forcing a license consumption whenever the IDE is open, but only whenever you are working with the LeanFT concept. For example, the Object Identification Center or the application model. So once you need that, you will start to consume a license again. And once the test is being executed again, a license is consumed.
Yeah, as soon as you start up your IDE, you'll see the runtime engine start up. So it's in your task manager. So if you close that down, you can still work in your IDE like Amir mentioned.
Great. Great job, Joe and Amir, on answering that question. Thank you. Here's another question. Do you still have to install NUnit or JUnit separately, or is this functionality included in your SDK?
Joe, do you want to take it?
So for NUnit, you do still need to import NUnit using NuGet or however, or import the Java directly. JUnit, I think it included it. I have to look again. I'm not sure, Amir, but it looked like when I did the JUnit template, it already included the JUnit framework without me having to do anything else.
Great. Thank you, Joe. And this next question, Joe, I'm guessing this would be for you, but how does LeanFT handle dynamic objects? Does the concept still remain as far as identification mechanism is based on object properties?
it is object properties, or you could use regular expressions also if it is a unique ID attached to the end of it, just like you do in UFT and QTP. So it does handle dynamic objects that way. I don't know, Amir, do you have any other options that's built into LeanFT?
You covered the main two. It is also important to mention that we are supporting still the VRI, meaning that regarding where the object is located comparing to other objects, you can also set your identification accordingly.
Fantastic. That's great. And bear with me here, just going through so many great questions here. Will it be possible for a clean machine to run a LeanFT script without prerequisites and maybe just Java or .NET?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. Will it be possible for a clean machine to run a LeanFT script without prerequisites and maybe just Java or .NET? So I think one of they're asking for is, is there any other dependent software, system software that has to be installed in the machine, or does it run clean right out of the box?
So.
Do you have a separate install for a runtime engine? So if you're going to run it on another machine without having the full LeanFT installed, you just need to install the LeanFT runtime engine option?
Yeah, actually that's a good answer. So in the installation of LeanFT, you have the possibility to install the full-blown LeanFT or just the runtime option for LeanFT. And this will save you a little bit more space. Less relevant here because LeanFT is quite lightweighted to begin with, but you have this option. So if you want to have like several slaves that will only execute your task, you can just have your developer IDE, and on top of it, just the runtime installation of LeanFT.
Great. And I do have, gentlemen, I think we've come to our last questions. There are a lot of duplicates here and whatnot. But let me ask this question to both of you. Does LeanFT script execute only locally, or can you direct the test to run on a different system?
Joe, do you want to take it, or do you want me?
You probably could explain it better. I think just as long as you have a license on the machine you want to run it on, it will run on it using either the runtime engine option installed on that machine or full-blown LeanFT on it. I don't know, Amir, you might probably have a better answer to that.
So first, it depends on which license model you are using. So in the concurrent model, you don't need to have a license on the machine because you're just consuming it from the license server once the execution starts. So all you need is basically a host or a remote slave where you can install either the full-blown LeanFT or just the runtime engine. And through Jenkins, for example, you can just set the host or the slave properly and assign it to a test. And you, of course, can run it as you do with regular UFT scripts. So same concept here.
So, gentlemen, Joe and Amir, let me ask you this because I may have been premature in ending it. Do you both see the questions, Joe and Amir?
Yes, we can.
I don't see them.
So Amir, how about if you take a look at some of the questions and address those that would be relevant to what you feel is the majority of the audience, and direct those accordingly.
Okay, I can give it a shot. So I see here a question, does the HTML report has a screenshot capture functionality? Yes, the answer is yes, it has. In the near future, we will also add maybe not only screenshot, but also movies capturing as well. There is a question how to open Object Identification Center in Eclipse. It's, as Joe showed you in Visual Studio, it's the same. You will have the Pandora icon, which opens the OIC, Object Identification Center. I'd like to use XUnit framework. Can I use it with LeanFT? So the answer is yes. Basically, we are not just telling you to use one of the frameworks that we have validated and work with, which is the JUnit, NUnit, and MBUnit. You can use this LeanFT SDK on other unit test frameworks. It hasn't been tested, and you might not get the full breadth of methods or capabilities that we provided in the ones that we are officially supporting. But theoretically, this SDK can be migrated to whatever framework that you desire. Okay, so
great. Thank you, Amir. And yeah, I know there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of great questions. So, we do want to thank the audience. I mean, feel free to keep the questions coming. We do have a bit more time.
So you know what I would, if we have more time, I just want to share with you my screen again. Okay, you can see my screen, right? But is it in a presentation mode or because I want to show you a web page?
Yes, we see your screen. So
can you see now the HTTPS site?
We see the sas.hp.com.
Yeah. Great.
Yep, that site. So great, an added bonus for the audience. There you go.
Okay.
More than worth the price of admission.
So this is a URL that I would like you to look into, because I saw many questions regarding the pricing of the term and also how to get your hands on the evaluation or trial version of LeanFT. So go ahead and write this address for your records. And as you can see here, we have built a site that allows you not only to get the knowledge of what LeanFT is, but also to try it and to look at the pricing, set up the pricing that is relevant for you, for your organization. 1 second, so we can see that we can do to build the package, deciding how many, what is the period that you would like to use, whether you want to use a concurrent license or a seat-based, which is locked to a machine, and you are getting basically in the checkout the final price that you will need to use. Or you can just start the trial by entering your details and downloading the installation. So this is the gate for all of you who would like to start using LeanFT from today.
Perfect. That was great, Amir. That was great. So you'll see that a number of other questions a lot of questions are still coming in.
Let me again look at what are the new questions that we haven't answered yet.
So one of the questions, Amir, that's a couple of the folks are asking if LeanFT is an indication that UFT is going to be going away somewhere down the road.
So no, this is something that is coming inside the UFT package, because we understand that some of our users already facing the challenges that UFT might not be able to address. And for those users who are typically more on the left side, if you remember my first slide, meaning the ones that are more technical, working in an agile shop and required to have a much better collaboration between dev and QA, for those kind of users, we built specifically LeanFT. But still, the vast majority of my R&D engineers and my focus is still on UFT, because we believe that, again, because it has many more features and many more, let's say, functionality that allow it to be more relevant for the less technical engineers, or to the ones that want to accomplish their goals in a maybe easier way. We believe still that UFT is their solution of choice. And by the fact that we gave it basically free of charge for the UFT users, it can give you a great example that we believe that we want to give it to the audience to decide what they prefer to use in each project. So it might be relevant for an engineer to use LeanFT in one project, but in another project to use UFT, either because it has technologies that LeanFT doesn't support, or because in that project he has, for example, the need to do a very through API thing, which LeanFT doesn't, or it has a need to use accelerator or BPT that LeanFT currently doesn't. So again, from my perspective, I'm looking at UFT as the flagship, and we will always have LeanFT as part of this flagship for free of charge. So this is the concept that was important for me to achieve from day one of building this solution.
Excellent, excellent. And Amir and Joe, here's a great question. And I know it's one I've heard before and I've answered myself. But Amir, I'd like to throw this one at you. Is LeanFT a unit testing tool, or is it a functional test automation tool?
It's definitely a functional test automation tool. It doesn't mean that you cannot do unit testing with it, but it is to cover the functional layer, mostly the GUI, but also you can do, as I mentioned before, also API testing. And the purpose is to provide a tool that will allow you to basically to replace UFT if needed to do the end-to-end testing. And this is, of course, much more broad than the unit test focus, which is mostly on the component level.
Very good, great. I'm sure that was very, very helpful. And if everybody would bear with me, just so many different questions coming in. So UFT has a separate license for service testing. Is it the same for LeanFT?
So the first part of the sentence isn't correct. So UFT license include the ability to use it either on the GUI layer or on the API layer. So one license of UFT, Unified Functional Testing, is named as such because it is a reunified solution that allows you to test not only the GUI and the API, but also the business process, let's say end-to-end test flow, and including also the ability now to use LeanFT as part of this license. So one license to allow you to do everything you need, basically.
Great, great. And we are getting close to 1:30. So if any of you have any last-minute questions you'd like to submit, we probably have time for about one or two more. And then we will wrap things up. But I do want to remind everybody about the Big Data Conference in Boston coming up very soon, and then the LeanFT presentation that will be taking place in London. But so just a couple of more questions here.
I see a question regarding which version of Visual Studio are supported. And
yes,
the answer for that is version 212 and 213. And you will need to use the trim level, or let's say use everything besides the Express version. So I think Visual Studio has at least 3 other versions, and not only the Express, and everything is supported besides the Express on those 2 versions of 2012 and 2013.
Fantastic. And here's the last question for the day, and I do want to remind the audience that all written questions will be responded to next week. And at the link that will go out in the follow-up emails, you'll be able to access the answers to the questions. So all of your questions will be answered. We apologize for not getting to them. But just a real quick last question, Amir. Does LeanFT support Flash images?
So currently, because UFT does not support Flash images, then LeanFT does not. But this is also something as part of the roadmap for UFT. This is in our, let's say, radar. So I hope we will be able to do that quite soon.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent. So with that being said, I want to thank Amir and Joe for just an outstanding webinar today. I mean, absolutely fantastic, gentlemen. It was informative. It was entertaining. So thank you so much on that. And HB Software and Vivit would especially like to thank those of you that were able to join us today. Have a great day, and please follow up with any more questions. Take care, and again, thank you.
Thank you. Good day. Bye-bye.